Context lean. Everyone thought they knew how a royal meeting should look. Polished, planned, predictable, scroll-stopping interjection. But this moment wasn't any of that. Contrarian snapback. Because when Princess Leonor crossed paths with football star Gavi in Spain, nothing unfolded the way the public expected, and the truth behind their encounter is far more human, far more emotional, and far more revealing than any headline ever captured. It begins in Madrid. Not during a ceremony, not on a balcony, not under the flash of endless cameras, but in the quiet moments before an event at La Zarzuela, where Leonor was preparing for another tightly packed day of royal duties. She had just returned from military training, her schedule layered with meetings, protocols, and her growing role as future queen. And yet, behind the calm composure she showed the world, there was a storm of responsibility, pressure, and expectation that few her age could ever imagine. Spain's rising football star Pablo Gavi was in a different world entirely: stadiums, chants, adrenaline. His life moved at full speed, every second judged by millions. Yet beneath the fame, he too fought a quieter tension: the expectations of a nation, the load of talent nurtured too young, and the constant battle to remain grounded. Two worlds that rarely overlap. Two lives shaped by pressure. Two young people carrying the weight of national pride in completely different arenas. And yet, this is where the curiosity loop begins. How did their worlds collide? And why did the meeting feel so significant that even insiders whispered about it for weeks? It started with an invitation, simple on the surface, but layered with subtle meaning. A sports initiative supporting youth programs in Spain, linked to Leonor's growing involvement in national development projects. Gavi was scheduled to attend as part of the athletic representation. A standard event. A routine plan. A predictable engagement. But nothing about what happened next was predictable. Leonor arrived first, dressed with understated elegance, balancing confidence with humility, something she had grown into steadily over the past years. Her presence filled the room with quiet authority, but those closest to her knew she was still adjusting to public scrutiny, still finding her voice as the future monarch. Then Gavi walked in, not as a superstar, not as a headline, but as a young man walking into an unfamiliar royal space, visibly trying to navigate the rules, the posture, the etiquette he'd never been trained for. This is where the second curiosity loop opens. What did they first say to each other? What broke the ice between royalty and a football icon? Witnesses later described the moment as unexpectedly natural. No staged smiles, no forced dialogue. Instead, Leonor greeted him with warmth that softened the formality of the setting. Gavi, slightly nervous but respectful, responded with genuine admiration for her work and the pressure she carried. He was honest, refreshingly so, admitting he had never been around royalty before and didn't know what to expect. Leonor laughed lightly, easing the tension. And that one laugh, soft, spontaneous, real, shifted the atmosphere. This wasn't a royal meeting. This was two young Spaniards who understood, in different ways, the burden of representing a nation. Their conversation moved with surprising ease. Football, service, responsibility, discipline, pride. Leonor asked about his training, Gavi asked about her schedule at the academy. She spoke about Spain's future, he talked about inspiring young athletes. They shared experiences that mirrored each other more than either of them expected. This is where the third curiosity loop forms. What did they learn about each other that the public doesn't know? Leonor discovered that behind the fierce, competitive player seen on the field, Gavi carried a quiet humility. A care for family, a respect for tradition, a deep desire to make Spain proud, not just through talent, but through character. Gavi discovered that Leonor was not the image often painted by tabloids. She wasn't distant. She wasn't unreachable. She spoke with depth, conviction, and maturity. She listened intently. And she carried Spain with her, not as a burden, but as a purpose. But the encounter didn't end there. As the event progressed, cameras eventually entered the room. The energy shifted instantly. Suddenly, every gesture had meaning. Every glance carried weight. Every step became a headline waiting to be written. Yet even in that tense environment, the earlier authenticity lingered between them. Their professional roles resumed, Leonor, poised and regal, Gavi, composed and respectful. But there remained a subtle connection, one forged in the minutes before the world was watching. And here the story deepens, because what followed wasn't public. It was private, not secret, just human. After the event, before parting ways, they exchanged a brief but meaningful conversation away from the microphones. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't romantic. It was something far more rare in public life: honesty. Gavi thanked her for making the meeting feel natural, admitting he expected formality but found warmth. Leonor thanked him for speaking openly, saying it reminded her that real connections, even brief ones, give strength during overwhelming duties. Insiders later described this moment as the kind that leaves an imprint, not because of feelings or rumors, but because of mutual respect born from vulnerability. And that brings us to the next curiosity loop. Why did this meeting create so much stir behind palace walls? Because the royal family had seen Leonor transition from student to soldier to heir, always composed, always mature. But this moment was different. Not romantic, not rebellious, just deeply human. A reminder that even future queens connect, laugh, feel pressure, and relate to people outside their world. For Queen Letizia, it wasn't the meeting itself that drew attention. It was what it symbolized: Leonor's growth into someone who could bridge worlds, who could stand confidently in her role while still remaining approachable. For King Felipe, it was evidence that Leonor had developed the emotional intelligence necessary for leadership, something no textbook or military program could teach. And for Leonor herself, it was a realization that her life, though structured and controlled, still allowed space for authentic moments, moments that reminded her she was not alone in carrying expectations. But the story doesn't end with symbolism. It continues with what happened after the meeting. Social media erupted. Headlines speculated. Fans exaggerated. Rumors spun stories far beyond reality. Some insisted the meeting had hidden meaning. Others insisted it was destiny. The noise grew louder with each passing hour. Yet behind closed doors, Leonor remained focused. She knew the truth: the encounter was meaningful, but not in the way the public insisted. It mattered because it showed her something she rarely had time to experience: normal interaction, normal conversation, a moment unfiltered by royal obligation. For Gavi, the reaction was equally overwhelming. Teammates teased him. Journalists shoved microphones in his face. The spotlight burned brighter. And yet he handled it with quiet dignity, refusing to feed speculation, protecting the sincerity of the moment. This forms the next curiosity loop. Did they meet again? Not in the way tabloids fantasized. Their worlds remained separate. Leonor returned to military training and official duties. Gavi continued competing at the highest level of football. But the respect formed during that encounter lived quietly in the background, two young icons carrying Spain's hopes, each in their own arena. What remained was not a relationship, but an impression. Leonor carried the reminder that authenticity still existed outside palace gates. Gavi carried the reminder that royalty, behind protocol, is human. Now, here is where the narrative deepens into emotional resonance. Every future monarch has a defining moment when they begin to understand the real meaning of leadership. For Leonor, that moment wasn't on a throne. It wasn't during training. It wasn't in a formal speech. It was in a simple conversation with someone who understood pressure, expectation, and responsibility from an entirely different world. Someone who spoke to her not as a princess, but as a person. And that encounter, though brief, added a new layer to her emotional maturity. It helped her breathe. It helped her reflect. It helped her realize that connection, empathy, and understanding are just as important as duty. For Gavi, the meeting was a reminder that role models come in many forms. He saw firsthand the discipline, grace, and weight Leonor carried, something that inspired him far beyond the field. It grounded him, it added perspective, and it strengthened his respect for Spain's future. So why does this story matter? Because it shows the humanity behind power. It shows the vulnerability behind fame. It shows that moments don't need to be dramatic to be impactful. One meeting. A shared understanding. A brief crossing of paths that shaped two young lives in quiet, meaningful ways. As Spain watches Leonor grow into her destiny, this moment stands as a reminder that leadership is not built on perfection, it is built on connection. And as Spain watches Gavi rise in football, this moment stands as a reminder that character is as important as talent. In the end, this story wasn't about romance. It wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about speculation. It was about two young Spaniards, each carrying the hopes of a nation, finding, for a moment, a piece of understanding in each other. And sometimes, that is more powerful than any rumor, any photograph, or any storyline the world tries to create. A royal moment. A human moment. A meaningful moment in Spain.